Good morning and welcome to the next webinar. It's really good to have you with us. Those of you who were with us last week actually for Hannah Tudor's webinar, which was a fascinating discussion about leadership and motivation and so forth. That's actually available now, and I think we're going to pop a little link to that on the chat stream during this if you missed it. You're able to see that, or if you did see it and you'd like to see it again, please do. So this is going to be a really interesting discussion today. We're joined by a tremendous special guest actually, and we're going to be talking about resilience. And I'd like to say that, of course, teachers and head teachers are among the most resilient people on the planet, the most resilient people I know. So we're not here to tell you how to be resilient. If you've coped with the last 2 or 3 months at least, then that certainly proves that you have huge reserves of resilience already. So we're here to discuss that, to celebrate that, and actually maybe to have some ideas as to how we can maintain that resilience when we hit September. So we're going to be joined by a tremendous guest actually to discuss a very curious title actually, if I may say, I, if, and our. David Gumbrell is a very experienced primary head teacher. Has years of experience in headship and teaching before that, now an author and coach, and has written and spoken extensively on the subject of resilience in school. So quite an important discussion. During this discussion, if you'd like to register your interest in the NAHT Discovery Pathway program, which you will hear us talk about, many of you on the call may already know a little bit about it. You're welcome to go onto the URL there and actually register your interest. At the end of this webinar, if you have 5 or 10 minutes, I would be delighted to walk you through the slides to show you the program itself, which has a unique blend, I think, of personal and professional development. And when you combine those two, I think that's a more empowering experience than your average CPD. So I'd be delighted to show you that program, launching in schools in September at the end of this. Throughout this discussion and after it, if you'd like to join the discussion on social media, there's a lot of discussion going on about what we're calling the whole teacher, by which I mean our personal development as well as our professional development. So please feel free to join in the discussion. You might wish to use the hashtag the whole teacher. So it just remains, and if you'd like to post some comments on the chat stream, please do. We're actually going to hopefully spare some time at the end for a few questions with David as well. So if you'd like to click on the Q&A button, you'll actually be able to post a question and we'll go through as many of those questions as we can at the very end. So it should be a very interesting question and answer session at the end. So it only remains for me to say welcome, David. I hope you're there. It's lovely to have you with us. It's just let David join us. Brilliant to see you, David. The technology works. We never know. Unexpected things happen sometimes. But that's why we need to be resilient, isn't it?
Indeed. You're right in thinking that head teachers are a very resilient bunch. So
they are. I mean,
need to be reminded of what needs to happen in terms of resilience.
I think that's the point, isn't it? Webinars like this bring it to the front of our consciousness again, isn't it? And help us to become a little bit more self-aware. But we're certainly not telling people how to be resilient. But David, I tell you what, if you don't mind, maybe just for a couple of minutes, could you tell us a little bit about your career and how you've ended up to where you are today? Absolutely.
Well, I think I've been 20 years a teacher, and so learned the craft of teaching in 4 different schools across Surrey. And I think that was important to bed that into a school setting. Worked my way through up the leadership ladder and got myself to headship. And I was a head of a junior school in Surrey for 7 years. And that was another fantastic part of my journey. And I learned a huge amount in that time. I wasn't a head teacher during a global pandemic. And so I don't know what it must feel like, although I did have a few tempestuous moments in my time during my headship. And I think that's where I anchor myself in my thinking, and I can empathise and sympathise with those who are going through this time at this moment. Hopefully sharing some ideas will help and support colleagues. And I think that resilience is sitting in amongst all of the ideas that came to fruition when I was thinking, why can I not get recruitment right? Why can I not get retention right? What's the missing R in this trio? And resilience came to bear, and then connected with the local university, and the Resilience Project was born, writing and presenting on the theme of resilience, why it matters, why we need to prioritise it, and then that theme has just run through. And my motivation for doing that is very much around, I believe that I wanted someone who could remind me of all the things that I kind of know, but maybe just hide away or shy away from at times.
I couldn't agree more, actually. We know this stuff, but it's very useful and very important to sit down occasionally, reflect and bring it back to the front of our consciousness and think about ourselves once in a while.
Absolutely.
Your piece, David, I should explain that David's written a cracking piece on the NAHT Hub, where you can go and see lots of really insightful pieces, as you know, lots of interesting articles. And the title of this discussion, indeed, is I, If, and Our. I've got to ask you, why did you go for that title? And what are you referring to there?
Well, I think that if I piqued your interest, Andrew, then potentially I've done half the battle. Because I think that piquing people's interest and being curious about ourselves and being curious about the world is a really important part of this journey. And I think if we can connect the known to the unknown, or the familiar with the unfamiliar, then that's a journey and a pathway that we can take. And so if, I, and are is trying to connect the unknown to the known. If, I, and are also sits beautifully as a kind of eye chart, doesn't it? And I like the idea of checking in on ourselves and seeing whether what we're seeing, our perception of what we're seeing, is accurate. Because I think sometimes when we're tired or we're hungry or we're overwhelmed, that we can't see through the trees, we can't see accurately. And so I like the idea of it being an eye chart. I think the idea of I being the highest is reminding ourselves of the importance of looking after ourselves, that we can be number one at times. We're not good at that as a profession. We're a really compassionate profession, aren't we? But we very rarely put the self at the beginning of that compassion. And so putting it at the top of my eye chart was that reminder that that's important. If, well, the Rudyard Kipling poem, if, but it's linking it to, if I can keep my head when all those around us are losing theirs, how are we going to do that? Well, we do that by looking after ourselves. And if we can look after ourselves, if we manage the I, then we can do the if. We can keep our head. Yep. And I think that if we can manage the I, we can do the if. And then leading into the R, Daniel Goleman, who is one of my favourite authors and has shaped my thinking significantly, and I write about him in my piece in the Discovery course, he says we can choose our response to situations. So he still feels that there's a choice. So it's not something that just happens to us. We have an element of choice. Yep. And I think that's really important. So those three words become an eye chart, and it's a checklist to see whether we're seeing things straight, whether we have an accurate perception of who we are, what we're doing, and where we are any particular moment in our day, week, year. Terrific.
Terrific. I love the idea of orientating us and also clarity of sight as well, and clarity of thought. The eye chart, I think, is a really interesting metaphor, actually. In your written piece then, actually, you've also, you mentioned leaning into our experience and beliefs in order to keep our heads. I wondered whether you wanted to expand on that a little bit, because it's an interesting notion.
I think we need to lean into things. And in order to lean into something, we've got to have an anchor point. And when we're trying to navigate these incredibly choppy waters, we need to have some sort of anchor. And so what can those anchors be? Well, I do some work for a group called Values-Based Education, and they run on the premise that values first, everything else comes second. So their anchor point is values. And I think if we can identify those core things, those core words, those core phrases that drive us in who we are and what we do, then that can really help to lean into that, knowing that that is the core belief, that's who we are, that's right down, deep down in the centre. Then that's a platform from which to bounce from. I think we can lean into our authenticity. So I think connecting with real people, connecting with others is around being authentic. And as a head teacher, I really try to be authentic, and I try to anchor myself to my values and try to be led by those values. And I tried to be quintessentially me, I described it. And some people might not like quintessentially me, but it's the best me I can be, and leaning into that was really useful. And I guess that the other thing that was driving me, that I leaned into in my choppy waters or my tempestuous storms, was trust. Trusting in myself and my judgments, but also trusting in my staff, my team, and trusting in my values that they would drive me in the right direction, they would head me in the right direction, I would be in the right place. So I think those are the things I think can help us to lean into and be a platform from which to bounce off from. And many people think that resilience is about bounce back ability, but it's a platform to bounce on forwards. And that we can exemplify those, then we'll bring everybody else with us. And hopefully that's what colleagues are going to be doing in their local communities, in their schools.
Well, there's an interesting almost conflict at the moment, this sort of juxtaposition of leaning into our beliefs and our values.
Yeah.
And Hannah and I talked about this briefly in last week's webinar, actually. She's a primary head. And there's almost a potential conflict between leaning into our beliefs and values and so forth, our core values, and the current situation, which may conflict with those. In other words, we believe very much in equal access and parity of provision and so forth, and perhaps the current challenges over the last few weeks have kind of potentially conflicted with our core beliefs. How do we cope with that?
Well, I think it's a very challenging situation, but I would say that in order to respond to that, I think that your experience of COVID is very different from my experience from COVID.
Yes. Yeah.
And your reaction to COVID has been a very different reaction to my reaction to COVID, potentially.
Yeah.
And that's fine, and that's okay. And so we just need to acknowledge that we've all come to a different point in a different place. We're all human beings that have experiences that have got us to this point. So like I guess a t-shirt, a one size fits all fits no one. Yeah. And a one size fits all in terms of the school setting doesn't fit everybody. But if we go for a different top, or rather than a top-down approach, to start with the baseline of having flexibility, allowing you to find your psychological safety wherever you find that, and try to help and support you to find that. It's okay for me to find that, and it's also okay for the children and the students and the parents to find that. So I think flexibility, I think active listening, I think that we need to listen better than we do. And by that I mean we are distracted, we have notifications, we have beeps, and we get distracted from the core purpose. But if we listen to other people, then we have a wider knowledge space from which to draw from. When we're trying to plan out our actions, we can be influenced by others because they may have had a different experience of COVID than we have. And I think it's the idea that resilience is about a particular time and a particular place, but it's dynamic, and we can't assume that if they're okay on Monday, they're going to be okay on Wednesday. And we can't assume that just because they're not showing any signs and symptoms, they haven't got it. And if they don't show any signs and symptoms of feeling stressed or pressurized, we've still got to acknowledge the elephant in the room. So I think that those are the things that we can link into to give us equality or equal access by working from where they're at rather than from somewhere down.
And it's something that it makes perfect sense to me, David. And it's something that I think head teachers and teachers, by their very nature, really, one of the things that drew them into the profession in the first place is because they're good at that, at empathy and at putting themselves in others' shoes. And I think now at the current time is so important. And it's something that came up last week, actually, the idea, I think Hannah mentioned it, now more than ever is a time for head teachers to be humans. And I think that's key. You've also said several times when we've met before, actually, you've often said that there are two I's in resilience for a reason. So do you want to talk to us a little bit more about that, David? It's an intriguing proposition.
Well, I think the idea of trying to connect the unconnectables again, so it's the idea of just putting the two I's and reminding people that there are two I's in resilience in order to prioritise I again. So it's because it's twice there, it's twice as important as other things. And it's that reminder, it's that little switch that might go in someone's mind. Oh yeah, that bloke was saying about, resilience had two I's. Oh, that means me. So it's making those connections. It's reminding people that the I could stand for importance. And that's what I talk about in the piece that we're discussing today. The I of importance, putting yourself at some point first is important. Not all the time, but we're not guilty of that. Many of us are not guilty of putting it as all the time.
Risk of that.
Some of the time would be good. And then I again, the second I arguably, could be I for integral. So it's deep down what matters. Some people say you can't pour from an empty cup. And the idea around that being that you can't keep giving. And as a head teacher, I did try and do that. I just kept on giving and giving and giving and giving, and then spent my half-term holidays and high days recovering from giving. And we're all guilty of that at times, I think. And it's easy to get swept up in that because you want to help people and you want to support people and you want to be compassionate towards people. But you've got to put that self into compassion. You've got to put the I higher, and that's why it's twice in resilience. Although E is too, isn't it, Andrew? But we're just shy away from that idea.
We'll think of a metaphor for that very quickly, I'm sure. I'm sure there'll be answers on a postcard. Fascinating. I could listen. I was completely swept away by that answer. I completely lost where I was in the questions. And this often happens when you interview really interesting and intriguing guests. Here's another one. How about you? You mentioned in your piece about finding an effective recharge for that I. And if it's not too personal a question, I'm just intrigued to know, what's your recharge? How do you recharge your I?
Well, I guess that if I'm talking about this thing and I'm writing about this thing, I've got to kind of live this thing, don't I? So I think it's a kind of legitimate question, although I'm always awkward to talk about me. But I think that the first I is an insatiable curiosity about the world. And that for me is a passion. That for me, I love the world in which I live, and I'm interested in the world in which I'm surrounded by. And I think that intellectual curiosity is what drives me forwards, wanting to know why. I don't know when we lose that, Andrew, but I think, I don't know, is it year 4 when we lose that intellectual curiosity? I don't know what happens, but we seem to forget it, or we apologise for the fact that we don't know something, or we're embarrassed that we don't know. I don't get to that point where I'm embarrassed that I don't know something. I just keep going. I think one of them is managing my sleep. So when I first came out of headship and I was linking with a professor in Australia who was a resilience expert, Andrew Fuller, he said, David, it's quite simple. Resilience is about sleep, sleep, and sleep. And he's right. If we can manage that and we can manage our resting time, then we can really recharge ourselves. And kids get that, because when I was linking with linking in a school, and this child said, so what you mean, sir, is that if I lie on my bed, that's just charging me up, like I'm plugging myself in.
Yes.
And I thought, absolutely.
Brilliant.
The child's got it, you know.
Brilliant.
And we don't do that. We do everything in our power to do everything against trying to get some decent sleep, thinking that we don't need it, or we're superheroes, or we can do without, or we can do with less. But we can't. And I know that now. I didn't know that as a teacher. I do know that now. And I guess the last thing I think is about making sure that my connections are genuine. Taking the time to be with people is something I love doing. And I'm a people person, and it drives me forwards. But genuine connection can be cathartic for both, and giving and taking is really empowering for both. And therefore, it's really important to prioritise that time. But I see too many staff rooms where it's like Clapham Junction and people pass through it, but don't stay for very long. And yet that genuine connection drives me forwards, because I learn stuff, and I hope I give learning to others, and I get as much as I give in all my connections.
Brilliant. Amen. Brilliant. Do you know what? When I notice my mobile phone, my phone charging levels sort of falling, dropping almost to red, I panic. I go into blind panic. I never, ever experience the same panic when my own charging levels, when my own levels of energy are dropping. So I think the analogy there is spot on, David. And I think there's a lot of people that will resonate with. Not me, that's for sure. Somewhat deficient in sleep, I think, at the moment. Do you know, you also talk about controlling the controllables, especially at the moment, David. And as you and I both know, in the last few months, there will be some elements of the job that are out of head teachers' control. And that is deeply worrying and deeply disconcerting and unsettling, isn't it? What sort of controllables might school leaders be able to focus on right now? Because you believe that controlling the controllables is important for your resilience, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the phrase control the controllables, because I think it puts you back in the driving seat. Yeah. And I think we can sometimes get to the point of worries me, I can't do anything about it. But, you know, we had the opportunity to go to a pub at the weekend, but that doesn't mean you have to go to a pub at the weekend. You have a choice. You are in control of that. So I think that we have more control than we allow ourselves to believe. I have connected with a lot of schools, and the schools that are getting this right is making a local offer rather than a national offer. And by that, I mean making the right offer for the community in which they're serving. And a fantastic school that I connected with yesterday, and they're talking about the local offer. What does their community need? And they have more control over that. Yes, there are elements that they can't control, but they're not wasting the time on they can't control that bit. They're just focusing their attention and their time and their energy on what they can control. And that head teacher was so poised in the way that they were presenting, and it was so reassuring to be so authentically supported in how I was feeling and where I wanted to go. So I think we can control the local offer, I kind of get. I think that we control our own emotions, situations. If we do our checklist, if we go through our I, a if, and our, then we can help ourselves to manage our reaction to situations. And I think that David Gumbrell has said this, and others have said this, that we can do more to proactively manage that rather than accidentally waiting for it to happen, like doing a marathon but no practice for it, and then going, how my legs ache. Well, there's kind of a reason for that. We need to practice it and get it right so that we can control our reaction when it inevitably comes, and it's headship. There's lots of decisions that we need to make. And I think we can control our to-do list a little bit more. I think we can see our to-do list better when we had a good sleep. We can see things more accurately when we've done our checklist. And I think that we can then prioritize people over paper.
Yeah.
We can share the burden. We can build the moment. We can build a collective. And collectively, we're going to do a lot more than we are able to if we do it on our own.
Fascinating. Again, we could talk for hours on that concept.
We can come back to it another point if you want.
I'm racing on because we've got lots of really good questions. And in your piece, David, you've also suggested that we should take time to reflect and imagine what we need to make the if a when. Can you explain what you mean by turning the if into a when?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah, go on, of course.
A four-letter word that fitted beautifully underneath the 1, 2, and 3-letter words.
There could have been other.
There are other four-letter words that I could have put in. So arguably there's a reason for it, and I will share that with you.
Well, what's the other reason?
When comes from, when we go to if,
yep.
We almost give ourselves an excuse to not do it. We almost, when we say if, we're going to give ourselves the opt-out clause and never do it.
Yes.
By adding when onto the checklist, it's empowering people to move from the if to the when. So that when is time bonded, when is going to happen, when is something that needs to be planned in. If is, I know I'm not going to do it, and I've just given myself the wonderful opt-out of not doing it. So if I have time, I'll go to the gym. You won't go. When am I going to the gym? I'm going to go. If I have time, I'm going to go for a walk. No. When am I going to go for a walk is a different. So it stops the wiggle room. It reduces the wiggle room on our to-do list. We put it on our to-do list and we do it. So it's when to get it done. It's time bonded to move it forwards. And I think we give ourselves too many opt-out clauses. And Steve Peters, who again I refer to in my discovery course, and I refer to in the piece that I wrote for NAHT, he says we often forget to look after ourselves. I'm not sure we forget to look after ourselves. I just think we put if onto it and not when. And when I go into coaching situations with head teachers and teachers and NQT, and I say, so when are we going to do this? Oh, when? What? So I've actually got to do it? Oh, yeah. So when are we going to do it and how are we going to do it? Not if. If never happens. And that's why when is a better word than other four-letter words that I could have put on my chart.
Brilliant. So much more proactive, isn't it? It's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
It's proactive. It's getting it done. It's
getting it done.
Not worries me waiting for it to happen. It's make it happen, prioritise it, do it.
Well, we've had a cracking time working together on the Pathway program. Yeah. And we're going to be doing we've been doing lots of you've been doing lots of reading materials, which I've had the joy and pleasure to read and edit and so forth. Didn't require any editing, to be honest, but enjoyed reading those. And we're looking forward to making some films with you in next week or the week after. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your particular course that you're doing for Pathway, because it's brilliant. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Well, I think today gives you a flavour of what I'm all about and how I present it. So it's empowering people to take better choices. It's empowering people to be resilient. It's empowering people to take control. It's metaphor driven. So what I've talked about today is metaphor driven, and my piece for Discovery is about metaphor, because I think that if we can lead the known to the unknown and the safe into the unsafe, and I feel comfortable with this, but I don't feel comfortable talking about mental health or resilience or me, then it's moving that. So all I've done is really, as I've moved eye charts to Bugley Salterton stones on a Devon beach, and I've moved a Kipling poem onto fortune tellers and what they can tell us about mental health. But that metaphor-driven model is something that is builds curiosity and leads us forward into a conversation about mental health and resilience that still seems to be something that is for other people.
Sheds light, sheds light on that which seems so invisible sometimes, and it turns the abstract into some physical thing, doesn't it?
I think so, and I think that's why I've utilised it in my books, in my writing. It's a platform to bounce from, because I think that it's curiosity, it's me, it's about curiosity being about the world in which we live, how things work, and connecting those things. So I think that's really important, and I think it's about my unit, and now is all about reflecting, empowering, and guiding actions and reminding people of its priority. It's something that we put on our to-do list, and we put if, and then it drops down the list, and then it drops off the list, and then we go repeat, and we do it all over again until we get to the point where you say, I can't do this anymore. But actually, we need to build it into a proactive, everyday stuff. Resilience is everybody every day, not somebody else somewhere else. It's me, including me. Although I have got the T-shirt, I do practice these things.
I think part of the point of the Pathway program is to recognise that it is not a self-indulgence to spend time on you and to reflect on your achievements. You know what I mean? And indeed to reflect on some of the deep down things that drew you into the profession in the first place that sometimes can leak away. I just wondered why you were keen to get involved in the Pathway program, and where sort of generally you see it helping, if you're able to say. Is that? Because
I'm passionate about supporting colleagues in this profession that I love.
Yeah.
Passionate about it, and I hope that's coming across. Yeah. I genuinely care about the people that are in this system, and the system is hard, the job is difficult, and therefore we've got to do more to help and support. And if I can come out into the wide world, and if I can get one head teacher to feel happier in their job, one teacher to feel more comfortable in being in the classroom, one more early career teacher to stick around for year 6, at 6th year rather than year 6, then I've done my job. And I think the Pathway program is really helping and supporting that, because I came to it because I believe in this mental health stuff, I believe in resilient stuff, I believe in people, and I think that it genuinely does too. I think the Pathway program is a prerequisite, is there are human beings out there that are trying their best. And I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like the flexibility that people can come at it in whichever way they want. And I like that flexibility. I think that flexibility is modern. I think that flexibility is realistic. And again, different people, different times, different places. I think it's taking ownership.
Yeah, it is.
CPD, it's taking ownership of yourself. So it's about me, it's about yourself. I mean, I come away from this webinar and I'm still me, and I've got to manage me, and other people are going to go away from this webinar and they've got to manage them. It's about empowering them to try and do something about it. And if the Discovery program can help and support that, then I'm all in for it.
Yeah.
It's coming out in September. I think guidance in tricky times. Well, it's going to be tricky times in September. So it's coming out at just the right time. If it's got a prerequisite of mental health and people matter, which is what I get from it. And that's what I really want to bring to the party.
Thank you, David. And it's just brilliant to have you with us, because you completely recognise the need to focus on the deep down things, the things beneath the iceberg sometimes, you know what I mean? They're less measurable, but by golly, they're impactful on our well-being and our motivation to turn up and do the job. You know, you mentioned very briefly, and because you're very modest, you probably wanted me to gloss over it, but I'm not going to. You did mention your books, and we've had a lot of comments in the chat stream. I've been reading actually, and listening, but I've been reading some of them. People have been asking for recommendations about books on this very topic. Do please spend a minute or two telling us about your books, because I've read them, and I know there are more coming down the track, and they're incredibly insightful, and your use of metaphor is brilliant, and they're quick reads. Please tell us a little bit about your books.
Thank you. I mean, I think the books are very much part of me, and I think that we can access to different people at different times in different places, and they could all be the 4-letter words that could go on my eye chart. So I could remove when, I could put lift and spin and risk in all of those categories, because those are the names of the books. But they're all trying to encourage people to be resilient, and they're all divided up into 39 chapters, 39 academic weeks in the academic year, and that little and often can make a big difference. You know, Kickstarter and crowdfunding, lots of little bits can add up to a lot, and it's that constant reminder. So it's written to support people around that. It's written to support people to come at it in the way that they want to come at it.
And they're so readable, David. They're so readable.
But they're trying to be accessible. They're trying to be friendly. Yeah. They're trying to be pick-upable, because we're all pressurized. I never felt as if I had enough time to do stuff for me as a head. But, you can read something in, 10 minutes, but it's just that little nugget that can hold you in the day, or it's that little nugget at lunchtime that can hold you for the afternoon, or it's that little nugget that can help and support you to reflect on your day, get yourself to calm, get yourself to psychological safety to go on and push forward, and importantly, to have a good night's sleep.
Amen to that. Get onto that recharging unit.
Absolutely, get onto that recharging unit and get yourself recharged.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting idea around whether teachers come first or the children come first. But you can't be the role model if you're not living the dream. And so I think that a lot of my work is around adults and teachers, and getting them to manage themselves. But clearly in a new world, then there's going to be a number of children that are going to be pressurised. And that theme will continue. That metaphor-driven model works for children, works for adults, works for all. Because actually children are more curious about their world than adults are. So it's even easier to write that one.
That'll be a pleasure, a dream to write. We've had a nice suggestion from Liz, actually, for those E's. Extending empathy, that's quite a nice one, isn't it? I think there are 3 E's in resilience. So we need another one, don't we? So let's look into that one, actually. Maybe that's your next project, David.
But yes,
I love that. I love the extending empathy thing.
Well, that could be the next chat thing, couldn't it? It could be, what's the E in resilience? Because that's twice too. So what could that be?
I think extending equal empathy, or extending empathy equally. Let's maybe run with that. I think that's really interesting. Lots of terrific comments in the chat stream, and thank you ever so much, everybody, for your comments. Clearly, David's books are clearly very popular already, and I can see why. Actually, they're so readable, and your use of metaphor is tremendous fun and very accessible. So, and thank you for contributing towards this Pathway program. It's been a tremendous experience, hasn't it, for us, as we shed light on some of those invisible things that we know are so important and are often neglected, I think, really. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to allow just a few minutes at the end to do a quick walkthrough of the Pathway program. But I'm really glad to have the opportunity to speak to you this morning, David. I'm sure the questions will come in. I think people, quite honestly, have just been so busy listening to you that it's difficult to come up with a question while we're listening to your words. Terrific questions, terrific comments and so forth, I should say. Entrust, empower and enlighten from Elaine. So There you go. We have it right there. I think there's a book in that, Elaine.
I think there's a book in that. They're not four-letter words, though. The idea of a four-letter word begin with A.
Yeah, terrific. So thank you ever so much for everybody's contributions, and thank you especially, David. We really need more time. I think maybe it's made me think once the Pathway program is launched, we'll be doing many of these webinars for Pathway users, if you like, for Pathway teachers and leaders. And of course, your program itself is going to be one of the jewels in the crown there, actually, in terms of when we actually present that in September. So do look out for that. If you get the Pathway program, David's course is in there, and we're going to have some fantastic filmed discussions next week. That's how we do things. They're not masterclasses, they're discussions. And I am honoured, I'm really privileged to be around the table with David next week talking about resilience in more depth. So thank you ever so much, David. I hope you have time to go off and have a cup of tea before you do whatever your next call is. You're much in demand, I know you are, but we've managed to grab you for half an hour or so today. So thank you ever so much. Really appreciate it. For those who have 5 minutes left, I'm happy to just very quickly run through the Pathway program, just to give you a sneaky sort of preview, really, of the bits and pieces that are coming up in September. But it'll just take 5 or 10 minutes or so, no more than that. But if you're able to stay, that'd be great. If you need to jump off because you have a million other things that I know you need to be doing in your roles as teachers and leaders, then thank you so much for joining us. We will actually be sharing details about another webinar that's coming up soon. Actually, I'll share with that at the end of the walkthrough, but just in case you need to go now, it's actually with Max Coates, Professor Max Coates, on developing successful teams. Very interesting discussion I'm going to have with Max. He's also contributing to the Pathway program. We filmed all day yesterday, actually, with Max, and he's done some terrific reading materials to go with it, some coaching materials on developing successful teams. That's on Tuesday, the 21st of July at 5 p.m. We'll have another great discussion with Professor Coates then, so I look forward to that. So do join us for that if you can. And we'll be putting some little links into the chat stream over the coming minutes so that you can click on that and attend that. Obviously, you can register your interest in the Pathway program, as I've said, and you can join the discussion, all those details. So we're just going to have a very quick walkthrough now of the Pathway program. It's about empowering teachers and leaders so that they flourish in their careers. And I think we do that by, I think, a really important combination of professional development and indeed personal development. And when you combine the two, I think hopefully we're able to enable teachers to hold on to something that's so important in the profession, which is your sense of empowerment. You've got this, you can do this, and you have the skills you need to enable your students to flourish too. And I think that sense of empowerment is something that is so easily lost, I think, really. And of course, you can keep your agency. You really are in control of this job, and you can keep all the skill set that you need. And I think that really can only be achieved when you blend professional development, but with personal development too, and you're in the right place and you're in the right space, the right headspace, if you like. I actually set ourselves kind of a core aim at the beginning of this. I've run schools, several schools over the years, and I was a teacher before that for 20 years. So I'm kind of used to working in a school environment where we set ourselves school development plans and core aims and strategic objectives as to how you're going to get there. This was the aim we set ourselves. And I actually then led into 3 key objectives really for this program: to assist teachers and leaders in the orientation of their careers by identifying their motivations, ambitions, professional skills and areas for development. That really important part of orientating your career. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? Next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. We really hope you stay in this profession for many years, but let's orientate it, get the compass out and get a sense of where is it you want to go, what's your direction? And then to navigate a system of continuous professional empowerment through high quality films and so forth. So navigate towards your future success using the online courses that we have. And then that all important wellbeing piece, the reflection piece, give yourself a chance to let the compliments stick, to pause, admire the view, rather than this relentless climbing, but to actually pause and reflect on the achievements that you've had. And that in turn helps your well-being, which is so important and needs to not be neglected. So essentially those 3 words leapt out at me: to orientate your career goals, really get a sense of where you are in the landscape and where you want to head to navigate your way to success, and then to pause and admire the view. And I think that's a new approach to CPD. It's so much more than professional capital, which is the phrase I hear a lot at the moment. It's a human thing, and it's deep down too, isn't it? So those three words actually form the corners, if you like, the pillars of this important program: orientation, navigation, and reflection. It's an integrated program. Continuous professional empowerment is the phrase I used ever since I started with Discovery in September, CPE. It's about professional empowerment, isn't it? Taken at your pace at a time that suits you. Online courses mean that you can revisit them whenever you wish to. Finish marking, finish doing all the planning, all the stuff that one does when we take the work home from work, unfortunately, and we're realistic enough to know that you're always going to take stuff home. Once you finish that, glass of wine, just resume that film that you were watching yesterday in your own time. And every film that you watch within the Pathway program, there are opportunities to reflect, so write your own responses and your own reflections. And you can even see the responses of others. And you can click and share some of your own responses too, if you wish to. There's a really important community piece at the center of this. So just a very brief look at the bubbles, as I've always called them, those three elements: a guide to motivation, skills audits, and a career map. The navigation section, which is the online CPE, and some other bits that I'm going to talk about next. And of course, that important reflection piece, a well-being program running through Pathway like a stick of rock. Written by the great Professor Tim O'Brien and his writing partner, Dr. Dennis Guiney. A fantastic, completely original, unique well-being program to keep you feeling positive and to keep your well-being at the center of things. So in a little bit more detail, the guide to motivation. We look at the nature of motivation, identifying what motivates you, understanding the motivational needs of others, how we speak to others in the language of motivation. That can make for really effective communication across your leadership team, across your wider team, if you understand the motivational drivers behind the work that they do. And then your own motivation plan. It's an interactive piece that you can write up your own responses and keep a check on your motivation, if you like, your motivation diary. We present to you a couple of different skills audits, one based on the teacher standards, really, looking at the whole range of different skills and attributes that you need in teaching and giving yourself an honest assessment, a self-assessment, really, and then some leadership competencies too, self-assessment statements throughout, some honest self-assessments to really get a sense of your strengths and your areas for development. Very important in order to stay on track. And your career map. Plot those goals, those professional roles that you wish to secure, but also your motivations and interests and your wider curriculum interests. In the 21 years I had in schools, it wasn't actually just the aspiring to the next leadership role that got me out of bed. It was actually the fact that I was running a chess club at lunchtime and coaching some rugby in the afternoon. And I remember we did a philosophy club after school on a Thursday night. Those were the things that really kept me motivated. And I would have probably liked to have had a tool like this to then be able to say, right, in a year's time, I'm going to host an inter-schools chess championship. And in 3 years' time, we're going to go off to join some national championships. You get the idea. So it's quite a nice idea to plot your extracurricular activities as well, and your health and well-being goals, the various different healthy pursuits and things that you have to keep you on track, how you're going to extend and progress those. That all goes into your career map. And then we have the navigation section. We have 20 online courses to begin with, CPE, Continuous Professional Empowerment courses, all of which have many, many different films embedded within them, and they're filmed discussions with fantastic experts in their field, but they're not masterclasses telling you how to do it on the assumption that you don't know how to do it. Of course you know how to do it. It's about bringing various bits and pieces back to the front of your consciousness and taking a seat at those roundtable discussions effectively and joining in with some of your responses and your reflections. Extensive reader materials accompany those discussions, lots of coaching questions for reflection, lots of thought leadership pieces, and a Discovery Education Certificate to show that you've completed it. What more could one ask for? What you don't need is a percentage to show whether you've passed or failed with a merit or a distinction. We're grown-ups here. This is about you and your levels of investment in yourself, which I think is a fresh approach. We hope in time to make sure that our content, new content that we keep bringing on every year, new content is aligning with the new NPQs, and we're having some very positive discussions already with a number of universities to see if we can align the new content with master's programs to enable you to notch up some credits towards a master's program that you're obviously paying for separately so that you can double bubble it, as it were. So we're having some tremendous conversations with some universities already who have been so welcoming and very keen to work with us, which is great. So more on that once we launch. And then the online community is a very important part of Pathway. Lots of opportunities to post and respond to comments, lots of podcasts and webinars, just like this one for Pathway teachers and leaders come September. And then the wellbeing program, as I mentioned, written by Tim and Dennis, very insightful, very engaging, very empowering program. Lifting the bonnet really so that you can really understand your own well-being and monitor it and keep an eye on it and stay positive. And the Advice Hub, powered by the NAHT, our friends and partners with whom we're working on Pathway. The head of advice, actually, Guy Dudley, has years of experience of talking to head teachers and leaders every day of his career. So we are thrilled to be having Guy Dudley leading on the Advice Hub within Pathway to make sure that that content is quality assured, is relevant, is updated all the time, because those are some of the headaches that I had as a head teacher, certainly in terms of my well-being. Actually, it was finding that I'd missed the deadline for census data or some other submission data, and I'd missed the deadline, or I was working from the wrong statutory guidance because somebody had just updated it in Whitehall. You know how it goes. So useful links and contacts, really important piece, actually, the Advice Hub. I'm thrilled to have that included. And then finding your career portfolio. I spent years as a head teacher looking at data dashboards, Raise Online back in the day, looking at the attainment and progress of my students in English and maths, their proximity towards that elusive progress score of 0, which doesn't seem terribly aspirational, but I understand that's important. But didn't do an awful lot for my own well-being and motivation and my own aspiration. This is a different dashboard. It's actually showing your levels of investment in yourself, how you're progressing with your motivation plan, how your skills audit is looking, where your areas of development are and where your strengths are, how your career portfolio is progressing and you're reaching your goals. You get the idea. So it's a dashboard showing you your levels of investment in you and your career. And that's not a self-indulgence. That's important because you matter. And the students in front of you and your families at home need the best version of you. And I think this is a great way of ensuring that you maintain that best self. High quality content, 20 courses in the first wave. Each course is made up of 4 chapters, and each chapter has a different film with lots of reading materials to accompany it. You read the introduction in every chapter, you watch the film, you read the thought piece, and you answer the questions for reflection, and you can keep returning to those questions whenever you wish. So it really is a very different approach to CPD. It's about you, and it's about your responses to this program, which you can come back and revisit whenever you wish. This is a sneaky peek at some of the slides. The program is being built by our colleagues in Discovery Education in the US, and we're working daily. We have daily stand-ups to see how things are going and to contribute. So it's been a real collaborative experience. Many of us have years of experience in teaching and leading, and it's been terrific to be seeing this coming to fruition, to see the actual slides and the platform coming to launch in September. So those are the three bubbles, as you'll know by now. Just a quick walk through some of the pages that you can see that you'll be getting into in September and being able to react with and interact with and write your own responses. This is one of many different courses with an overview, very intuitive. It's been written and put together very simply so that you can click your way through all the different units and chapters and get back to it very quickly if you want to watch a little bit and return on a Sunday morning after you've had a stroll, or back on a Tuesday night with a glass of wine, or whatever takes your fancy, a cup of tea. And you can keep coming back to this program all the time. And we keep on adding, we will be adding more content all the time. So it will be very extensive, very expansive suite of different online courses, looking at the whole gambit really of teaching, of leading, of living. So we hope you can orientate your career goals. We need to really help you with that, we hope, to really use that compass to get a sense of where you're heading. We hope we can help you to navigate your way to success over a long and flourishing career in this important profession, providing occasionally you can reflect and admire the view and reflect on those achievements that you're having every day. Those thank yous, let the compliments stick, as they say. So together, if we combine all of those important elements, we think this is a very fresh approach to CPD. It's a very human approach. And we look forward to sharing it with you in September. A couple of weeks' time then, we have another webinar with Professor Coates, as I mentioned, Professor of Education, with some tremendous insight into how we develop successful teams. And we had tremendous fun yesterday completing his course, filming all the film discussions that we had in various parts and on various different topics. And I learned so much yesterday about leadership. I really did. So I can't wait to share that course with you. And we're going to be discussing it, Max and I, together in a couple of weeks' time. So join us on the 21st of July at 5 p.m, where we'll do this again. We'll have lots of contributions from everybody, I'm sure. And obviously, in the meantime, there's hashtag the whole teacher. If you'd like to join the discussion on social media, please do. I can't wait to jump off this and actually read some of the comments that we've been sharing, because I know that people have been tremendously supportive. And we welcome your feedback and we welcome your comments. And I would love to be working with people on this call in future weeks and months, when we're always on the lookout for authentic people who are still continuing to do the job, authentic, continuing practitioners in teaching and leading. It is content written by teachers for teachers. So get in touch with me if you'd like to. If you'd like to register your interest and find out more about the Pathway program, the URL is down there on the bottom at the left. Please do visit there, and you can find out much more, and we can keep you informed of progress towards the September launch. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been terrific to see so many people with us right the way through to the very end. We've all earned a cup of tea. I'm certainly going to have one of those. So hopefully join us again, as I say, 21st of July, 5 p.m, and we'll do it all again. Thank you so much for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.